So, you bought your Stormcast Eternal paint set, and you're ready to venture into the worlds of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. In this step-by-step guide, we'll be showing you how to use the contents of this box set to quickly and easily get your miniatures painted, and learn the basics of painting Warhammer. Before you know it, your models will be needing reinforcements. Painting Warhammer is fun and rewarding, and I'm here to walk you through each stage of the process. So let's get started. However, remember that these are your miniatures. You don't have to stick to the box art colours. Feel free to let your imagination run wild. Before we start painting, you need to build your Stormcast. You'll see on the back of the box that there are some instructions on how to build your 3 models. To help you with building, have a look at our Painting Essentials How to Build Your Mini video for some top tips. Once you have those models built, we'll need to gather a few things before we start painting. To paint miniatures, you'll need a water pot and some paper towel, and something to use as a palette. The plastic tray in the box is great for this. And a good light source will help you see all those details. If you'd like to know more about setting up a painting area, we've got a handy video packed full of information. The paints we've used in this guide are the ones found in the set, and they are listed on the screen now. We're using the paints in the set to replicate the images of the miniatures on the box art. It's a good idea to keep your box to hand when you're painting, so you can either use it to refer back to if you're unsure what parts to paint in which colours. We'll be painting these Stormcast Eternals in the classic gold and blue scheme of the Hammers of Sigmar. The first thing we'll be doing is something called an undercoat, and we'll be using our pot of Retributor Armour to do this. Don't worry if you've not heard of undercoating before, I'll be talking you through it. So what is an undercoat? This is where we apply paint to the whole model, and this acts as a foundation for all our other paints to stick to. There are 2 ways to do this, using a spray can or by using paint from the pot. In this case, we're going to be painting it from the pot of Retributor Armour, as it's the main colour of our Liberators. If you want to learn more about undercoating with a spray can, we've got a video all about it called Spray Paints and Undercoating. But back to our paint pot method. It's normal for the paint to settle and separate in the pot over time, so let's give it a good shake until it's a smooth, even colour. Break the seal and push the lid until it clicks into the tab at the back to help keep the pot open while in use. Wet your starter brush from the set with a little bit of water. Wipe away any excess on a paper towel so it's damp but not sodden. And load the bristles with a little bit of paint from the reservoir inside the lid. Take care not to get this paint all the way up to the metal part of the brush, which is called the ferrule, as this can damage the brush as it dries. Just about halfway up the bristles is plenty of paint. You can learn more about this technique in our thinning paints video. Thinning our paints gives us the ability to avoid creating lumps on the model and obscuring the smallest of details on our models. But we do want to be careful that we don't thin it too much, or the paint will just slip off the model. Thinning our paints creates a smoother consistency, which can be applied with several thin coats to a miniature. This might seem to take a little bit longer, but it will give you a much better end result. You'll see that these miniatures are packed full of detail. If we apply one thick coat of paint, we risk clogging up all that awesome detail. We avoid this by applying a couple of thin layers instead. This ensures that we still get to see all that detail and we get a smooth finish. You can be really messy at this stage. Just make sure that you get the paint into every little nook and cranny and flat surface. You'll notice that the first coat may seem to struggle to stick to the plastic. But don't worry, just keep going over and cover as much as you can in one coat. You'll need to leave this first coat to dry for around 15 minutes, which gives you plenty of time to start undercoating your other Liberators. Once it's dry, apply the second coat in exactly the same way. You'll notice that the coverage this time is much better. And when that's dry, apply a third coat. The end result should look something like this, with the model covered evenly in Retributor Armour for the armour and trim. Well done, you just undercoated your first model. Now we can start adding some other colours by base coating. Our next paint we'll be using is Leadbelcher for our silver details, such as the scale mail skirt, belt buckle and hammerhead. Base coating is similar to undercoating, but instead of covering the whole model, we are going to be focusing on adding paint to certain details, to give them some solid colours of their own. When applying base coats, just thin it down with a little bit of water like you did before. It'll probably take 2 coats to achieve complete coverage. We want to be as neat as we can here, so it will give us a much better end result and save us time, as we won't have to do so much tidying up later on. However, if you do get any silver in the wrong areas, just take your Retributor Armour and tidy up by covering the mistake in a coat or 2. Don't forget to thin it down with water though, as the more layers of paint we apply to our model, the more we risk creating lumps and bumps if those are thick layers. Thin layers are a super easy way to get that smooth finish we want. You might notice that the water is looking a little shiny, because we've been using metallic paints. After you've finished with the gold and silver, it's a good idea to change your pot of paint water. We don't want any of those metallic flakes getting into our brush and making our non-metallic paints shiny. With your paint water now clean, we can keep on going with our next colour. We'll use Kantor Blue to paint the pauldrons on the shoulders and the front of the shield, as well as the weapon handles too. Follow the same methods as you've done with the last paints, trying to be as neat as you can. Both these details have gold trim and icons on them, so we want to avoid adding blue paint to those. But once you have multiple coats of blue applied and dried, you can tidy up the trim and shield icon with Retributor Armour. But don't worry about the icons on the shoulder and the lightning bolt detail on the shield front. We'll be painting them next. Just focus on getting those gold details tidied up. Remember to wait for the paints to dry before moving on to the next stage. Don't forget that you can be painting your other miniatures whilst you're waiting for paint to dry. Doing this will have them all done before you know it. Now we're going to use Corax White to paint the Liberator icons on the shoulder pads and the lightning bolt detail on the front of the shield. As you can see, some of the areas we need to paint are very close to the blue and gold. So try and be as neat as you can. This is why it's easier to paint the raised, smaller details after the main colours are down. Plus, if you make any mistakes, a quick coat of Kantor Blue or Retributor Armour will easily tidy up any mishaps with the white, especially around the edges that meet the other colours. You can also pick out any base details if there are any. As this colour is lighter, you can do 1 coat on all your models. Then we can move on to the second coat once they're all dried, keeping the flow of paint going. Once that's dry, you have actually finished base coating all your first miniatures. Well done! If you want to stop here, you absolutely can. They are more than ready to take down the enemies of Sigmar. However, if you'd like to learn more about how to use the other paints included in your set, keep watching. The next thing we're going to do is apply Agrax Earthshade to the gold, silver and blue details. This paint is different to the others because it's a shade paint. Shade paints are very thin and are designed to slightly tint flat surfaces of the miniature while settling into the recesses. You'll notice how this creates depth on a miniature and darkening down those recessed areas. Applying a shade is a quick and easy way to really take your paint job up to the next level. We won't need to add any water to this paint. Just take it straight from the pot, making sure there isn't too much on your brush. You can find out more information about shade paints in our Painting Essentials playlist. Agrax Earthshade works for so many base coats, so we can apply it to quite a few of our colours here. When you're doing this, work in small sections, focusing on those details in that area. We want to avoid this paint drying too quickly anywhere, as it could leave marks on flat surfaces and create an inconsistent finish. We could do this by applying just enough that it flows into those recesses, but doesn't slip down the model when it's drying, creating dark patches. We'll be leaving the Corax White details just as they are, as we don't want to make these details look dirty or brown in colour, just a nice clean white. But if there are any skulls and bones on the bases, we'll quickly add a coat to those, making them nice and dirty. You might notice it sometimes pulls really heavily in some of the recesses. We actually want to avoid this from happening, as it isn't quite the finish we're looking for. If you find this happening, clean off your brush and dry it off. Then place it back into the area and you'll see it soaks up some of the shade. Wipe this off on a paper towel and continue until you reduce the pooling. Now it looks much better. Shades will take around 30 minutes to dry, so don't forget you can work on your other miniatures while you're waiting. Just take your time and enjoy the process. The final paint we'll be using is Astrogranite, and we'll be applying this to the base. Astrogranite is a type of technical paint. This is a range of citadel paints created for basing and to add all sorts of effects to your miniatures. We have a video all about technical paints if you'd like to see more of them in action. This particular one is designed to be used on bases to create a textured sand effect. Basing a miniature really helps to finish it off and brings the whole thing to life. We tend to do this last to finish off the painting process, but some people prefer to base their miniatures earlier or even at the start. To apply this, we're going to show you two different methods depending on the tools you have available. Technical paints like Astrogranite can be tough to get out of brushes, so we don't want to use the brush included in the kit, as it's likely to get ruined in the process. First, we have the Citadel Texture Tool, which you can buy on the Warhammer website or in one of our Warhammer stores. This is the quickest and easiest way to apply technical paints onto bases, as it's specially designed for the job. It is a plastic tool with two scoops on it, one large and one small. We use the large end to scoop out the paint from the pot and apply it to the base. The small end is really helpful when it comes to getting the paint around the Liberator's feet. If you can, try and avoid getting any Astrogranite on the miniature itself or on the rim of the base. Just a little around the feet will help to tie the model and the base together really well. If you don't have the texture tool, alternatively you could fashion a tool from the plastic tray or cardboard box the models and paint came in. It will take a while as it's quite small, but it's a great option if you don't have the texture tool to hand. Technical paints can take around an hour to dry, so leave them in a safe place while they dry and they'll be ready in no time at all. Congratulations! Your first Stormcast Eternal Liberators are complete and ready to face the evil creatures in the worlds of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. If you want to learn more and get those next steps in place, we have the Painting Essentials playlist for all our beginner tips and tricks. We also have a lot of painting videos on our Warhammer YouTube channel, with various techniques and model guides for you to watch. Or maybe you prefer to talk to a person. We have hundreds of Warhammer stores across the world with amazing staff ready to help you out. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video and we'll see you next time. Bye bye!